It's not about what we did close, it's about what we didn't close. A salesperson does best if they listen first. Sales isn't about being persuasive, it's about being prepared.
What do I do? What's the outcome? And then how does it work? They want to know, what are you going to do to fix my problem now?
When emotion is high, intelligence is low. So when you are prepared, your emotions aren't high, you're coming in from a very practical perspective, and then you can respond in advance because you know your response could be, and then you can go from there.
Sales isn't about persuasion, sales is about preparation. Welcome to Business Lunatics, the weekly show where four fearless loonies pull back the curtain on the wild, the wonderful, and sometimes downright ridiculous world of entrepreneurship. We talk about entrepreneurship with no fluff, no BS. It's just pure business madness. And today we don't have Freddie with us, but we're going to press forward and try to unpack what does it really mean to prepare for sales. So in our past few shows, we've been talking about lead generation and trying to focus our attention on leads. Now let's go into sales. But we want to talk about how technology, especially AI, can help us tighten our position, our strength of responses, and learn from the deals we didn't close. And I think that's the most important part for today. It's not about what we did close; it's about what we didn't close. Sales isn't about being persuasive, it's about being prepared. And preparation gives us the unfair advantage or the additional advantage over our competition. Rochelle, why don't you get us started today on objection handling?
Okay, here we go. I just think all of us is, when people think of objections, they think there's a huge laundry list. It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's like 1,000 objections, and there really aren't. They're basically, a couple. Each industry has their level of objections, and it's the same thing over and over again. So my thought on objection handling is two things. Number one, you want to come prepared for them because you know you're going to get them. So what are the common objections in your industry? And then in advance have the answers to them so that you don't freak out when you hear them. So when somebody says, I can't afford it, instead of like losing a kidney on the floor, like, what do you mean you can't afford it? What'd you get on the call with me for? You can start preparing for it. Like, you can't, like, so you can have a response to what do you mean you can't afford it. So you can say, like, what did you have in mind? There's a lot of ways that you can go around it, but the key is you need to be in advance. You need to know your response, because when you know about it in advance, here's what I said in previous sessions. When emotion is high, intelligence is low. So when you are prepared, your emotions aren't high, you're coming in from a very practical perspective, and then you can respond in advance because you know your response could be, and then you can go from there. So I want to start thinking. Number one is make a list of all your objections, because there's probably about 3 or 4 that you hear over and over again. And then in advance, just be prepared. And along with that, you have to practice it. You have to practice it out loud. You can't just write it on a sheet of paper. You have to practice it. So by the time the objection comes up, you're so comfortable with it. It's almost as if you're ordering coffee in Starbucks. It doesn't have an emotional twang to it anymore. And that's the key. We got to keep the emotion out of it. What's your thought on that, Steve?
You know, just last night at 9 o'clock, I did a presentation for the California crew on data mining and note takers is nothing but gold. And understanding what your clients and your prospects think about what you are delivering or saying or producing is huge gold for you to understand what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, how they perceive you, whether they can actually articulate what it is that you do, whether or not they actually had an objection or they just didn't understand. It was not actually an objection. I took 10 Fathom note taker transcripts and I put them into a folder I created a chat GPT screen. I went new. I added all the files in, and I said, tell me what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong in my sales process based off of these transcripts. And it read through the transcripts. I won't read all the answers because some of them weren't very nice. What I
And
got out of it, honestly,
yeah.
was they trust you, they like you, they realize that you are an authoritarian in your field, but they can't articulate what you do to somebody else in their office. So the main problem I had was, and I'm going to get to the objections here in a second because that was part of it. The main issue that I have, the first one is that they can I'm not explaining it so that they can regurgitate it to somebody else, which means they can't go to their boss or their partner or whoever and say, yeah, Steve's this great AI guy. He doesn't sell a AI guy and help with governance. He mitigates risk. He gets rid of exposure. He protects us. That's what I really do. But I wasn't saying that. I was saying, oh yeah, we do governance and guardrails and ethics, and nobody gives a shit in plain English. I'm just going to be honest. But in terms of objections, I had been working with my marketing person on this whole process. I've been doing this for a couple weeks now, and I actually have a full objection list. And it told me when I ran this, last night was just a re-exercise of one I'd done for weeks, but I just happened to have redone it again last night. And guess what? It's getting better, but I'm not quite there yet. Oh, and by the way, I demo too fast, too soon, and too often. So stop with
Yeah.
the demo. People don't care. They want to know, what are you going to do to fix my problem now? And the objection thing has been really good because I've been, and I said to Katie, my marketing girl, I'm like, I'm not going to remember all these objection responses. She goes, just start reading them. And over time, they'll start to percolate in your brain a little bit. What do you got, Melih? What do you
I
think?
mean, you're right. It's you have to make it habit, right? I mean, to some extent, you're doing the whole memorization process, but until you have it habit, it's going to take a while for you to be able to just naturally fall into the process of dealing with these objections. Rochelle, when you were talking a little bit ago, one of the things I was thinking about is maybe listing out what are some possible objections, and you hit it on the head. There's only a few, right? I mean, in terms of what's most likely going to be your objections in the sales process. Number one is going to be price all the time. So the question is, are you prepared to work through the conversation if it's on price? Number two, and unfortunately, this is a really shabby excuse, is timing. Oh, it's the holidays. Oh, it's summer.
Or I'm
Or oh,
busy.
it's right. That's right. And so the question is, are you prepared to work through the conversation if the response to you is a timing issue? It's a blame excuse, but how do you work through it? Or the brush off. I need to think about it. It's like, okay,
Let me
well,
talk to my partner.
yeah, or something silly like that, right? For example, the thing that we had a sales guy years ago, and he used to drive me nuts. So, for example, let's say somebody turns around and says to you, "I need to think about it." What he would do is ask a silly question whether it's relevant or not, and
Yep.
it forced you to to continue the conversation with him. It was crazy.
When you
Um,
disconnect their train of
yeah,
thought, they would
exactly.
say to me,
And
"How
that's
much
what
does
he
it
was
cost?" And
doing.
I would say 1,000 Dugarans. And
Yeah.
they go, 1,000 Dugarans? What the hell's a Dugarand? I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Right,
It's
right,
irrelevant because it's not about cost. It's about, are you willing to pay what the price is to get the value that you're looking for?
right. Exactly. And so your points on AI are spot on. I went through a conversation earlier today, actually, on this very topic, where people were where the conversation was take your transcripts and upload them to ChatGPT for an analysis. Or alternatively, I had come across a sales call coach, not a sales coach, sales
Yeah.
call coach.
Got a coach on
And
phone
she
calls.
created her own GPT to help sales people become more effective in their sales approach or analyze their
You
sales
can
efforts.
have AI interview you and throw you, and you can say to it, ask me questions that'll throw me off. I
Right,
want you to purposefully ask me things that I would never think of.
right.
And or throw me objections that are just out of this world that I don't know how I'm ever going to answer them. Whatever.
Got a couple. Let's go down this road. I
Go
think a
ahead.
lot of people do a really dismal job. If you're getting objections, a lot of it you weren't as effective in your conversation with the person. And we've got to get clear about two things. Number one, you can't speak jargon. So when you speak jargon in your industry, it's the quickest way to connect to somebody. But when you're speaking your industry jargon with somebody else, it's the quickest way to disconnect. That's number one. Number
Yep.
two, you got to be clear what your benefits are. And I've got a better one than that. You want to know the benefit of the benefit. So if you do something, what's the benefit? And then what's the benefit of that? When you go deep into the benefit of the benefit, people get to say, well, you know what? I really haven't thought of that. You've really taken me down a road that I hadn't contemplated. And the last thing, when you're really talking about sales and objection handling, you got to go into what I call the COI, the cost of inaction. What's going to happen
Hmm.
if you go forward? You're telling me you've expressed this migraine that you've had. You've had it for, I mean, I'm not even clear how long. And I understand that you're uncomfortable and there's risk involved. But what would working shoulder to shoulder look like so that this is no longer your migraine? That, imagine what it would look like when this is complete and done. And
Yeah.
then what's the benefit of that? When we go into the benefit of the benefit, they get that you are really listening, you understand my issue, and you're going to pull me out of this. Now, the other thing is you cannot speak common. When you speak common and you speak like everyone else, they don't think you know it. They don't consider you intimate. They don't
And
consider.
that doesn't mean tricky terminology from your industry. That means not speaking commonly.
I have a. I've got two pet peeves. Let me start with my two pet peeves. Number one, let's talk about common language. When somebody gets, we're very proud of our service. I can kill somebody for that. What do you mean you're proud of your service? Of course you're there to give great service. And what's great service? If you give great service, in my opinion, you're going to come to my apartment and vacuum because I have three dogs and I have dog hair. So that's great service to me. I don't think that's what you're talking about. So don't tell me you have great service. Unless you
Excuse
tell
me.
me a story
Bless
of
you.
what that is, I have no idea what you're talking about. And the last one, this is a biggie that, I mean, I hope I don't offend anybody here. When somebody tells me they think outside the box, I'm ready to kill them, especially if you're creative. Because if you're creative and you use the word I think outside the box, you just prove to me you're not creative. You're boring and you're lazy. And if you're boring and lazy, you're not getting a check from me. So your
Mhm.
language is incredibly important through the entire time that you're having a conversation with somebody so that they can relate and understand that you are there with them. You're there to work shoulder to shoulder. You've said something that you can do a risk reversal and ideally you're going to produce the result that they're interested in and the benefit of the benefit. Now, if you can put all of that in a package with a bow, you got it made.
Well, both
Agreed.
both you guys touched on what I think would be our next major topic, and as we're going through today's show, is the elevator pitch, or what is it that you're saying? Rochelle, you talked about listening, right? I think that's important. A salesperson does best if they listen first instead of trying to pitch. And Steve, you were talking a lot about articulating what you do, right? And so it all boils down to what is our elevator pitch.
Oh,
And
I mean,
so,
I'm
you
like
know,
I'm like amazing at that. Here's what I find with elevator
mhm,
pitches. People don't prepare. They wing it. They show up last minute and they're long-winded, boring, and boring equals broke. Okay? So, and they speak in jargon. So I always
right.
say that there's also a cadence. My name, and I mean this, my name is Alan. I'm an accountant. I'm in Midtown Manhattan. I'm doing this for 30 years. And my response to that is I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. I don't get to see your level of expertise. And I said this in previous shows. When somebody tells me they're doing something for 25 years, unless you tell me why that's important, you've just positioned yourself as the Flintstones or prehistoric instead of positioning yourself as the Jetson and futuristic.
I love
We've
when you
talked
talk
about that
about the
before in
Flintstones
on
and
this
Jetsons.
show.
I
For
didn't,
those of you that don't know, their prehistoric future is what they are.
you just, Alan the accountant. So I don't get to see your level of expertise. But
Right.
when you
But
say and I've worked with an accountant, I'll tell you how I changed his pitch. The pitch we said is numbers tell a story. Is your numbers exciting? Are they troublesome? But let me tell you, on my watch, they will never be a tragedy. And my name is Alan, and I'm going to protect those numbers for your business growth. So now I see
right.
this guy watch my back.
Yeah.
So
But
I'm going to jump in real quick on this one because
go
I
ahead.
think I got some good points here. So I've been around a long time. I won't tell you my age; it doesn't matter. But I have in front of me my 4 pillar coach core messaging kit. And it's what my chief marketing officer and I have put together after going through all my transcripts. And one of them is your elevator pitch, talking points. I mean, right on topic, right? When someone wants to know more, hit these points in your own words. The situation: companies in regulated industries are stuck on two bad options: ban AI completely, which is impossible, or let employees use it freely, which is very risky. Both options are losing strategies. AI sprawl, shadow AI rather. I mean, stay hidden and you are surprised with something that goes wrong, or you're constantly trying to maintain control. Now, I'm not going to read this verbatim to somebody, and that's not the intent of this. But we've taken the time to write down what the potential situation is, and then the problem, and then what's the solution, which leads to what do I do? What's the outcome? And then how does it work? If I can articulate that information, that's a bit of a long elevator pitch because
What
elevator
do
means you
you
got
do? You want another
15
problem that you
seconds.
solve?
But
Easy. What's the
Right.
problem
What's the
that
problem you solve? Exactly. Right.
right,
I
right.
agree.
Yeah,
I
I
was I
get
was
it.
mentioning
Well,
that.
I
it's easy.
understand that, but
Somebody asks me, what do you do? And I say, people reach out to me because they suffer in 3 areas: decision making. If you put an Uzi to their head, they
I
can't.
did preface this by it's a work in progress. I was just working on this, right?
Yeah. But
I
I
did
mean
say that. I thought so.
So
it
again,
boils
But
down to
what
if you can't
what is the
explain it,
problem that
right?
you? That's what
Yeah.
people are interested in.
and
Tell
Yeah.
you only have 15 seconds tops, depending on how many floors you got.
you. I don't believe that. I believe you have longer, but it's based on your tonality.
So
So
something I used to
Yeah.
do when I owned my IT company and we fix computers. So somebody would say, "What do you do?" I would say, "I improve people's lives through the use of technology." And I'd shut up because what that did, it got their brain thinking. Oh, like how do
But
you
more
improve
importantly,
this
you pause
technology?
there. You're giving them an opportunity to think and to
Right.
respond instead of just
Exactly.
constantly talking, right? I mean,
Exactly.
that's the issue over here. I'm going to
I
go back
just
to
want
this
to know
idea
the
that
problem
you
that
have,
you solve.
yeah, you have to listen. You have to be able to explain it simply, otherwise you won't be
Yep.
able to sell it, right? Um, and if
Yeah.
you are listening, you should be able to respond with a result that focuses on what it is that pain point or is or was. And so the idea is, can you manage that conversation confidently? And Rochelle, what you just said in a different way, how you deliver what it is you're saying makes a huge difference. There's no question that it's
Yeah.
going to
What you do is
impact.
not as important as the outcome.
Yep,
You have
definitely.
to it with confidence and you have to practice saying it out loud. And most people don't.
Yeah, I've
And
got
I'm
a lot of
Yep.
reading, trust me.
all the time. I walk 3 dogs 3 times a day. So when I'm outside and I'm walking my dog, I'll practice a pitch. And I practice does it sound exciting? Is my voice okay? Do I sound confident? Can somebody really understand what I do?
Do you know you could do that with AI and it'll tell you and critique you and it'll help you with your pitch. It'll
Oh,
help you with what to
but
say and how to
AI
say it.
cannot But AI is 50% of the problem. The other 50% is speaking it out loud. At some point,
Right.
you have to deliver it
Well,
out
I'm
loud.
just using it as a coach.
So
It's like someone to bounce back at me.
Yeah, AI can write your pitch. You have to go from there, you have to practice your pitch so that by the time somebody asks you, you're at an event and they say, I'm doing a speech on this, as a matter of fact, tomorrow, which is really funny. And I'm going to start off by saying, quick question, what's the most common question people are asked? And they don't ask you often, what's your astrological sign? Yeah, occasionally here and there.
What do you
Thank
do?
God they don't ask you how much do you weigh, because that would really be an issue. But they do ask you, what do you do? And how you answer that question will, moving forward, will deliver the kind of interest, in what you guys, in what you have to say. So
Right.
we've got to practice it, and people don't.
Well,
Hey,
I
when you say practice, what comes to my mind are actors, right? They got the script in front of them,
yeah.
and they are trying to remember their lines. Well, guess what? This is not that different. You're going to have to, like, if you're using AI, let's say, and you draft various pitches, right? Well, practice those pitches. Test your tone. Is it a bold tone? Is it a consulting tone? Is it a pit, a sales tone where you're going directly at the client? Test them all out. Be in front of a mirror, and you need to figure out how to optimize what it is that you're going to say for different audiences. And more importantly, practice makes perfect, right? I mean, this is an
Yeah,
old
but
adage, but
my point in AI is I'm not suggesting everybody go out and ask AI to write your sales pitch. That's not going to work. And there's always a human in the loop. What I am suggesting is that there's a benefit of a tool that's readily available on our phones. And when I go out and I go for a walk, my dog is passed, but I still go for a walk every single day. I talk to Chloe. ChatGPT is my Chloe, and I'll have conversations. I'll practice sales pitches and I'll say, tell me, did I sound convincing? How was
right.
my tone? What did I listen enough? What was the percentage of listen time versus talk time? And I get real feedback, just like going through my transcripts. So I'm just saying, use the benefits of the power of newer technology to help you if you have no one else you can do it with that'll answer your questions for you. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I agree. I think that's exactly the process that we need to take, right?
Mhm.
People don't do it, unfortunately. And I think what we need to take a closer look at, for example, is our positioning, right? Or how do we position our value versus our pricing, right?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, number one objection, right? We talked about it earlier, is going to be price objections. And are you ready to handle your response to price objections? And price objection is going to certainly going
Goes
to
by
be
you.
it's too high,
I read a
right?
book called The Prosperous Coach
Mhm.
by Rich Lipton. And one of the first things he said 50 million times in the book was recite your price, know your price. Do not be afraid to charge $5,000 for your time if that's what you're worth, and believe that's what you're worth. But that's only going to happen from repetition of saying it out loud. Rochelle, you hit the nail on the head. Say it out loud, say it proud, get in front of a mirror, whatever.
Here's
But
the
you're
key to
worth
that.
it.
You've got, again, let's go back to this. What's the problem that you solve? If you're
Yeah.
going to tell me that you have a complicated problem, and I'm telling you in advance, this is what I deal with. I deal with this level of complication, and that's in my elevator pitch. You will understand my level of expertise. Then, when the price comes up, you'll say, you know what? This, she really has her stuff together. This is not a bargain. She's not a Walmart lady. I
Right.
always say pricing goes by, you've got Walmart, let's say lower price like Macy's, then you've got high level Bloomingdale's, and then you got Prada. You can claim Prada based on your level of expertise. I want to know your level of complexity. So when you're dealing now, if you don't have a level of complexity, then maybe you don't have that pricing. But you've got to recognize, I find that my clients have what I call very high level of skill, but they speak generic. And because they speak so generic, they can't claim their high rise pricing. And I've had two clients triple their pricing. I said, you can triple your pricing, lose 40% of your business, and still make more money. Let's
Well,
do the,
what you're saying though is, are you a commodity or a specialist, right?
well, it's even more
Right.
than that. It's even
People
more.
will
Okay.
pay for value. I mean, we're kind of
Yeah.
getting off topic, but people will pay for what they perceive to be value.
That's where your pitch comes in. That's where your elevator pitch comes in. Do I get to see what you can deliver based on what you tell? And here's the other thing I say in my pitch. I always say, when you're talking about your business, are you storytelling or boring telling? Did you tell me that high-end story that, oh my God, if this guy can do that, then he can definitely come in and solve my issue? You
Mhm.
got to tell, I want to know, how did you pull a rabbit out of a hat? I don't want to know about your day to day. Everyone can do that. I want to
Well,
know your to do that's high level in
you,
high crisis that delivered a result. That's worth money.
right. There's one more thing though on positioning as we were talking about this, is we need to know what our competition is doing. We need to be able to understand whether or not we're competitive in the marketplace. We need to know whether or not we're high, we're middle, we're low, especially on the pricing issue, as well as what's included in the price. My thought here, and Steve, I think you'll chime in on this. We can use AI to analyze our competition. We can take a look, get a general sense of what it is that they're offering compared to what we're offering, and then use that data to determine where we position ourselves in the marketplace, let alone when we're pitching a prospect.
Mhm.
I think this is where there's a way to use, yeah, go ahead.
Well, let them finish before you argue with them. Hold on.
So what I'm saying is we need to understand market perception, right? We need to understand whether or not we are competitive, and we need to understand what is our price versus our value versus what we're offering, what we're actually doing. And so this little loop here of positioning, identity, pricing that we've recently here started talking about, I think is important, because what we pitch is going to ultimately determine how, not only whether or not the prospect is saying I can trust you.
Okay, let me give you a different end of that one. And I'm going to
Go
say
for it.
it's a
Oh, I
great.
got one when you're done. Don't worry.
Okay, here we go. I worked with a marketing lady, and she was brilliant. Her claim to fame was PowerPoints, and she did a PowerPoint for an entertainment channel. Okay, they came to her with this they needed a PowerPoint. They were going to use it twice a year. And when they were and they used this PowerPoint for two times a year for 2 years. So they used it four times. But when did they use it? They used it during Market Week. Okay, so during Market Week, when you had like the advertiser for Home Depot and whatever, that's when they were using this presentation. This presentation was responsible for millions of dollars of revenue. Millions. This
Okay.
presentation brought in millions of dollars of revenue. And she was charging $9,000. And I said, you're full of shit, not on my watch. Not on my watch. I made her more than triple her price. She did another thing for a soft pharmaceutical, new drug. Now, this is
Yeah.
a new drug. When you're doing a new drug, and they were using it in a medical convention. So they're introducing a drug. When you're introducing a drug, they're not looking for millions, they're looking for billions. And you're charging 8 or 9 grand? Not on my watch.
So
So
I will.
says industry charges 150 an hour. I said I don't care what industry, you're basing on results. So I rewrote her pitch and I said, when I do your PowerPoint, I need to put my business hat on, not my creative hat. And I need to know that every slide has to generate $1 million worth of revenue.
So
Now,
I
when you
will.
like that, they're gonna pay you 50,000 for the thing, not 7.
I will concur with you, and I'll tell you a little quick story. Way back when, in my early computer days, there was a kosher catering company, and they had this software called Cater X, we'll call it, okay? Because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. This software cost the sales guy $700. He sold it for $28,000 per year on subscription basis. The software did exactly what this kosher catering company needed. And it didn't matter if it cost $100 or $50 billion, but it helped them make millions of dollars in selling their kosher products. But the moral to the story is I looked at them like $700. You're charging 28,000 a year. Are you kidding me? I want to be you. I want to learn how to do what you're doing. Well, hear me out. Hear me out. Wait. There's a moral to the story. The moral to the story is people will pay for what they believe they're getting value for. If you don't believe it yourself, you can't charge for it because you don't believe it in your heart. You're never going to get paid for it. But people will pay for value at the end of the day. So knowing, so for Melih's suggestion of knowing what's going on in the market, very, very important. Understanding your client's pricing, very important. But I'll tell you a little secret. If you got something they don't, and you're ahead of them in like what's called SWT, is strengths, weaknesses, and trends, right? And threats. How about strengths, weaknesses, and trends? If I know what trends are coming down the road and I can get ahead of everybody and jump on those trends before everybody else, I can charge $1 billion. It doesn't matter because nobody's got it and nobody can catch me. So you're right.
And I think that I'm speaking from my side of the industry. Okay, we're dealing with change on a regular basis, and we need to understand what are the trends, what is coming down the pipeline, what is it that customers are going to want. As a matter of fact, I have made it a core element over the last, I don't know, 20 some odd years that I need to be able to tell the client or the prospect for that matter what it is that they should be doing before they ask me. We don't want a prospect asking or a client asking, hey, do you do this? Well, if they ask that question, that means they already know that it's in the marketplace.
And they're talking to somebody else. And they're talking to somebody else, which you don't want anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more.
Hey, guys, we're coming to our 30-minute mark on the show. Why don't we start off with our takeaways for today? Rochelle, why don't you start off?
To understand what your elevator pitch is and know what you are delivering. What is the problem that you solve? Big problem, big paycheck. And also, I think if you can, you charge by the result that you are delivering, not by what's going on in your industry. I don't care what industry does. If you are delivering a high-end result, you can charge a very sexy number.
Very cool. Steve.
My advice is is to go through your note takers, but your transcripts, but on a serious note. In some way, form, or fashion, learn how to get your core messaging kit down. Learn what the objections are and how to respond to them and start memorizing them. Learn what your actual pitch is, not from what you think it means, from what they will perceive it to mean. And I think it'll help you guys a lot. I won't give you too much.
I'm going to go with a variation of what you two just said. I'm going to say that sales isn't about persuasion. Sales is about preparation. And we talked a lot about that today in today's show.
And understanding.
And understanding. And on that note, that's it for today, for this week's Business Lunatics. Hit follow, hit subscribe, and join the loonies next week for more no fluff, no BS, and just pure business madness. Thank you very much for joining us today.